Hi, welcome back. Now in today's video, I'm going to talk about why I'm not in a cult and why I don't believe that I will be joining any cults anytime soon. Now, I obviously look like somebody who would join a cult. I seem very open to different religions and pseudo-religions. I have a bit of a cultish vibe, and I have an interest in paganism. I have an interest in Wicca. I have an interest, I suppose, in the occult, and more than anything, I grew up as a Roman Catholic, which has its own cultish practices as well, you may argue, although I wouldn't argue that. And while it's true that I have spent a lot of time in Japan and I have been involved with a single cult while in Japan, where I went and visited the grave of Japanese Jesus, which has links to a cult called Mahikari, but probably some other cults as well. And on a different trip to Japan, I did go to a cult temple, the same cult, Mahikari. And of course, I have walked past the office of that cult, which is actually walking distance from this apartment. But aside from that, and a lot of people will defend Mahikari and say that they're just a new age religion and not a cult. And I suppose there's some truth in that. When people talk about cults, they often think of death cults, or I think they think about spiritual leaders who are manipulating people to join their group. I think the idea is often that you're unable to leave the cult on your free will, or if you do leave the cult, you might be ostracized, and people don't like to be ostracized. But I haven't had that experience. I've never been in a cult, so I wouldn't know how that feels. And I know it's not really a topic to talk about lightly. A lot of people have suffered a lot at the hand of cults. But there are many arguments to be made that I am part of a cult, and not just because I grew up as a Roman Catholic, and not just because I was part of Scouts when I was young, which has a cultish vibe. Actually, I was only a cub-scout. But I remember having to howl at they made you act like a wolf and you had to look at the ceiling and howl, which is very cultish, but it wasn't very hard to leave Cub Scouts, And I always wonder, what are the different levels of cults? Like, people can go and say, well, you are part of a cult because you were in Cub Scouts, you are part of a cult. Like in my case, because I'm on YouTube, anyone who has a YouTube channel could be part of a cult. Like, you're part of the cult of YouTube. My interest in the MBTI and identifying as an INFP personality type. A lot of people say, well, that's clearly a cult that you're in. But I do feel like being into MBTI and personality type theory is not as dangerous a cult to get into if you compare it to a death cult. For instance, a death cult where you have to all die. That's a very extreme example, and people will say that's a very cheap shot, and you're only bringing that up to deflect the fact that you are very much in a cult, the fact that you believe in MBTI, or the fact that you are in the Catholic Church. You're in a cult, you're in denial, and you need to do something about this. And to those people, I guess I can say, all right, maybe you're correct. I don't know what the actual definition anymore is of cults, but it's interesting in life, I think, where you want to draw the line about whether someone's in a dangerous situation or not. Is there nuance to all of this? Are you in a cult just because you're in a family? Is your family a cult? Is that different to being part of Scientology? Is that different in any way to being part of Mahikari and believing that the Japanese people are the superior race? Is that any different to being a Cub Scout? Is that any different to being in an organization where you're employed full-time to do a certain job? I don't know what the differences are anymore, but I want to argue in this video that for all intents and purposes, I don't think it's wise to go and say that I am somebody who is in a cult. I'm a cultist. And I know that people might think that I am spreading misinformation by making this video, and that all of the evidence is there that I am in a cult and I need to be stopped. Maybe the whole idea of whether or not I should be stopped is a completely different topic. But anyway, I'd love to hear what you think. Do you think that I'm in a cult? Do I look like the type who would join a cult? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and I'll see you next time.